and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. Tom Homan, in his presser, once he made landfall in what was formerly Minneapolis earlier in the week, said something that is simple and true and completely overwhelmed by the histrionics of the left and all of the institutions that amplify their antics. But he's actually living proof of it. He was there for the last 6 presidents.
Again, ICE is making this up. They're enforcing laws enacted by Congress and signed by the president. The same laws have been on the books for the last 6 presidents I worked for. I started with President Reagan and ending with President Trump. Every administration, we enforce the same laws. If you don't like what ICE is doing, instead of protesting this building, go protest Congress. Tell me what changes.
Whatever you say, Goebbels. Now let's get to the real intellects here. You have to fold them in. It's been a heady week of Hollywood celebrities inveighing on the topic. Of course, we understand those individuals to be our intellectual superiors because they're famous and they're rich and we enjoy their films and their sitcoms. I mean, who doesn't enjoy Full House with a John Stamos? Glenn Close calling for a revolution. I mean, it was predicting one, actually, although I think she had, as I mentioned, the distribution of people who have a lot of guns in their cellars, as she said. I think she has the distribution of the political disposition of those people very wrong. But, okay. As I mentioned, John Stamos said, hey, enough's enough. Katy Perry called for a shutdown of the federal government over DHS funding. She's such a policy wonk, real green eye shades artist, that Katy Perry. And then the other day, no less than Lady Gaga at a concert, the location which I will disclose, so wait for it, had this to say.
I want to take a second to talk about something that's extremely important to me. Something important to people all over the world, and especially in America right now. In a couple of days, I'm going to be heading home, and my heart is aching, thinking about the people, the children, the families all over America who are being mercilessly targeted by ICE. I'm thinking about all of their pain and how their lives are being destroyed right in front of us. I'm also thinking about Minnesota and everyone back at home who is living in so much fear and searching for answers on what we all should do. When entire communities lose their sense of safety and belonging, it breaks something in all of us. I hope that you'll all stand with us tonight. I know we're not in America right now, but we are with our community, and we love you. I'd like to dedicate Bad Romance to all of the... So she was in Mexico City. She was in Managua, Caracas. She was in Tokyo.
where Japan and all of those Japanese Lady Gaga fans who have about the same civic knowledge, apparently, as Lady Gaga fans in this country. Japan has one of the most restrictive immigration regimes in the world. In fact, it has the lowest percentage of immigrants of any industrialized nation. The posture of Japanese politicos since World War II has been zero immigration. They've relaxed it slightly for targeted, skills-based immigration, temporary, that they need because, as Mark Stein famously said, Japan would have been better to invent the walker than the walkman because of their demographic death spiral. So the complete lack of self-awareness, the coming together in Japan to call for open borders. David Harsanyi joins us now, senior writer for the Washington Examiner, co-host of the You're Wrong podcast, and author of The Rise of Blue Anon, How the Democrats Became a Party of Conspiracy Theorists. David, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
That was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you tried. I mean, it's just too delicious to pass up. And so much of the spewage this week from the left has been, hasn't it?
Yeah. Japan is notoriously xenophobic, I would say, and as far as outsiders go. So it was a funny place for her to do that. I saw yesterday others calling for revolution at one of these award shows, and it is kind of like we laugh at it because they're so dumb, but it is reckless, right? I mean, there are a lot of credulous people out there who listen to this stuff, and they think we're on the brink of some kind of civil war, when in fact we are, you can go to D.C., you can go to your politicians, you can affect change. You don't have to be on the street standing in front of, cosplaying Tiananmen Square when it's just simply not the case that that's happening here.
Yeah. And now we're going to be treated, I want to get your perspective on this since the news just broke, we're going to be treated probably at the Grammys to people wearing, Tropicana pins or something in free Don Lemon. But what do you think about Don Lemon, you say Lemon, his arrest? Does it concern you that he becomes another individual they sort of martyrize, free press and all that, or based on his conduct on that day in and around that church, it's warranted?
I mean, it seemed to me he was part of what was going on and not reporting on what was going on. But I'm slightly concerned, because I hate to see him become a martyr, because I think he's a very incredibly also reckless so-called journalist who is a propagandist, really, and a person. And again, it's not that he has an opinion; it's that he has 30 years of lying, basically. But I do concern myself when a person at least says they're a journalist is arrested, and I hope there's a very good case, and maybe there is. But I don't know if the upside here is worth it in the long run. But it just happened, so I'd have to think it through a little bit more. Yeah,
I know. I mean, it's one of those things where if the case is there, the boomerang of no one is above the law. Attorneys who conspire with their criminal clients can be prosecuted too. It's happened. It does happen. And there's a lot of evidence that Don Lemon actually broadcast that he was a collaborator and not just a reporter, as you said. But the other dynamic of this, I think that there's just an appetite for is, people on the center right want to see these people that seem to be completely above the law when it comes to their reckless conduct. It just always gets chalked up to incompetence or difference of opinion, or and no one is held accountable, whether you're the head of a major federal law enforcement agency or you're one of these celebutante, quote unquote, journalists. They want to see somebody held to account for something somewhere.
Right. What happens is that the left believes they're on a higher moral plane than we are, so that they can act in ways that are illegal, unlawful, and get away with it because their cause is right and your cause is evil. That's highly debatable at the very least. But this idea that, and obviously their mantra for years is no one is above the law when they're arresting the president on trumped up charges or whatever. But now suddenly They're going to be defenders of the First Amendment and the Second Amendment suddenly, which is nice to see, I guess, when it suits them. So the hypocrisy is hard to swallow, but also it's highly misleading, obviously, on both the First and Second Amendment issues.
Something else you said, you wrote about recently that's a little bit misleading. Yes, everyone has a right to protest, say whatever you want, dress up however you want, put whatever message you want on your cardboard placard and all that jazz. But, the protest culture itself is not like this celebration of, the founding principles of this country. And you draw that distinction, and I wanted you to elaborate on that.
I mean, you can. There are a lot of things you can do that you shouldn't do, and but more than that, I think at some point, probably in the '60s, people began conflating protesting and good citizenry or patriotism. Well, a lot of people don't have time for that sort of thing, and they live their lives and pay their taxes and raise their kids, and they're just as patriotic, if not more, than the person out there with the sign. But it seems to me that protest culture, which has now kind of evolved into, or not evolved because this happened in the 60s too, the cultural depictions of the 60s always show peaceful hippies, but they weren't peaceful either, is to try to force other people to, what did AOC say? That she thinks that making people uncomfortable is the whole purpose of protesting. Yes. Well, I don't think that it should be, but it also has evolved into something more, like putting people in dangerous situations, for instance, when they get in the way of ICE agents or try to run over an ICE agent or whatever they're doing, they get a bit hysterical. So that's protest culture, and I don't think it's very American. I don't think it's very healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're lying down in the road to prevent people from getting to work on time and things like that. I mean, so it's there are limits to it, and so it's the whole. They always sort of bastardize something that is true when they're not outright lying, which is to say, yes, of course you can speak your mind, although they don't really particularly respect when people speak their minds that they disagree with, as we've seen on college campuses and virtually anywhere else too. I mean, they're notorious for these same people for shouting people down or worse. But it always gets bastardized into that, sort of anything that can be characterized properly or improperly as protest is just part of speaking truth to power, except it's not truth.
Yeah, and there's this parallel idea that I grew up with, at least, that I'm supposed to respect anyone just because they're out there protesting or just because they have a really strong, passionate opinion about something. Well, some of these opinions are odious, or some of them are wrong, and there's no reason for me to pretend otherwise. And as you say, most of these people, I suspect, would shut down our free speech if they could. I mean, I've just seen it. I've just seen how progressives act when they say that words are violence or all the other ideas they use to try to censor people they disagree with. So I'm not really that impressed.
The other thing that they do a good job of is sort of focusing everybody's attention on a particular, if something's happening nationally, focusing everybody's attention on a particular place where they're going to flood the zone, like Minneapolis. Meanwhile, there are ICE and CBP operations going on around the country. There have been 600 plus people arrested in New Orleans, nearly 300 of whom have a criminal background in addition to being here illegally. And this goes on without any fanfare because there is not the same thing happening there. And there's more cooperation starting at the state level in Louisiana than in a place like Minnesota or Illinois. And it distorts a lot of people's understanding of what's actually happening because you're just fixated on one place rather than and you don't have that one place in the context of similar operations in other places.
Yeah. Any state that cooperates with ICE, federal ICE agents, you don't have this going on. So the idea that there's a revolution coming because in Minneapolis some of these people are successful and not really successful because it's become tragic, and I hate to see anyone being shot, but they magnify. The focus is on one place. Everyone believes that place is about to blow up, but it's just also with that there's this thing where the latest thing with BLM, Gaza, it's probably the same people using the same tactics, being funded. This is not, in my view at least, this is not organic protest. This is funded. And like you say, I think they're pretty successful in creating the perception that something really big is going on, and then everyone, the celebrities, the Democrats, they all talk about it. But frankly, when you look at polls, most Americans don't like the idea of illegal immigration, and they want to deport people. So I don't think Trump should back down. In general, I don't think he will on this issue.
David Harsanyi, senior writer for the Washington Examiner, co-host of the You're Wrong podcast, and author of The Rise of Blue Anon, How the Democrats Became a Party of Conspiracy Theorists. David, thank you as always.
Anytime. Thank you.
And David joined us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Rashaw talks about building income in retirement.
You can actually structure it in a way that have that $4,000 a month coming in the door every single month. So you don't have to look at the stock ticker and say, oh, the stock market's up today, stock market's down. You still got that $4,000 a month, and having that